Good evening, you're watching No Spin. I'm Nidhi Razdan. Justice DY Chandrachud took oath as the 50th Chief Justice of India today with a tenure of 2 years, the longest for any Chief Justice in over a decade. Over the years, Justice Chandrachud has, through a number of his judgments, been at the forefront of protecting values that are at the essence of our democracy, like personal liberty and dissent in democracy. At a time when the Supreme Court itself has come under fierce scrutiny, his tenure comes with a huge burden of expectations. It also comes at a time when the government has been making some strong statements about the appointment of judges. Just days earlier, Union Law Minister Kiren Rijiju hit out at the collegium system under which appointments to judges of the High Court and Supreme Court are made by the Chief Justice of India after consulting senior-most judges. Mr. Rijiju called the system opaque and not accountable and said that the government would not remain silent forever. In an interview to the Indian Express, Justice Chandrachud has said there is a legitimate public interest in knowing how judges are appointed, but that we also need to preserve the privacy of the people, members of the bar or judges of the High Court who are under consideration. Well, joining us first on the program tonight is Sanjay Hegde, Senior Advocate of the Supreme Court. We'll also be joined by Mr. Satyapal Jain, Additional Solicitor General of India and member of the BJP. Sanjay Hegde, how do you see this confrontation potentially playing out now? These are very, very strong comments by the Law Minister and in a way a warning also to the judiciary.
Yes, I'm quite surprised by what the Law Minister said, because after all, over the past few years, after the NJSC was struck down by the Supreme Court, the government has had its way with regard to most appointments. If it doesn't want to make an appointment, notwithstanding the fact that the collegium has reiterated a name more than once, they just sit on the name and give themselves a pocket veto. So essentially, the government has taken upon itself to decide that if it doesn't like the face, it will not appoint the judge. All that they can now complain about is that, look, we recommended X, Y, or Z. We thought he or she would make a good judge and the government would be comfortable with that. But the collegium is not making those recommendations. If it is the government's position that it wants to directly appoint judges themselves and consultation with the judiciary or taking on board the judiciary's opinion is not really mandatory, we are looking at a new system of appointments. Well, you would require a constitutional amendment again, and that would have to go through the basic structure test.
We have Mr. Satyapal Jain joining us as well. Mr. Jain, first of all, there's been a lot of criticism of the Law Minister's comments from former judges, including on this program, which will be playing out shortly, but also others currently practicing in the courts. That the government should not have any say in appointments. Yes, things may need to be cleaned up. But was this a veiled warning to the judiciary to sort of change the system of appointments by saying that the government won't remain silent forever?
See, there are two patterns which were adopted in this country for the appointment of judges. Before SP Gupta's case, the appointments used to be made by the government in consultation with the Chief Justice of the country and of the concerned state. Then came the Constitution Bench judgments, which said that no, the government is nobody to make the appointment, even after consultation with the Chief Justice. It is the collegium of the courts concerned, Supreme Court, High Court, which will make the appointments. Let's not forget that many top prominent judges of the court, High Court, Supreme Court, were appointed under the old system. Now, we may say anything that we may like about the consultation appointment by the government. Number two, I want to make it very clear. Academically, it is always in the interest of any system that you discuss publicly both the pros and cons of the system, both the systems have their own plus points, both the system had their own 9 points. Number two, the Law Minister has only said that we want the appointments to be made. Some people are of the view that instead of the collegium system, the National Judicial Appointment Commission would have been the best. And let's not forget those people who are talking of the will of the nation, NJSC was passed unanimously by both houses of parliament, consisting of BJP, Congress, CPM, Akali Dal, DMK, AIDMK, all the parties. Was not that the will of the people? Still, Supreme Court said no. Constitution Bench 4-1 said no. This is against the basic.
But sir, respectfully, which political party will not want to have a say in the appointment of judges to the higher judiciary in particular? Does that mean that's good for democracy?
No question of any political party. Government doesn't say that we will make the appointment of our own. The only thing that all parties wanted was that instead of collegium system, let there be a National Judicial Appointment Commission. And what is the composition of that? Except one nominee, law minister, all other are either the judges of the Supreme Court or retired judges of the Supreme Court. Therefore, just to blame the government for each and everything, I think that is not fair. Let's evolve a system where there is a perfection, where we get the best out of them. Simply to criticize the government this way or that way, that is always prerogative of any person.
Sanjay Hegde, wouldn't you agree that yes, the current system is too opaque? I think most people do concede that. What would be the ideal way, in your view, to then have these appointments?
Well, opacity is a different question apart from independence of the judiciary. It was the late Mr. Ram Jethmalani, I think he was a BJP member then, who said that there are two kinds of judges in this country, those who know the law and those who know the law minister. It was after that comment that the collegium system came in during Justice Verma's time. Now, I do not know whether the current law minister wants to have more kind of lawyers who know him being appointed as judges. As far as opacity is concerned, opacity concerns can be addressed by having a secretariat which would take all names, and there would be a continuing body, and at least the names could be made reasonably public, so that if there is any material against them, that could be invited, processed about 6 or 8 months actually before the matter comes to the collegium. There can be filters of that kind.
But are you saying
that's not what
Mr. Jain says, for example, in the NJAC bill that the Supreme Court struck down, as Mr. Jain says, there was only one government nominee there, which was the law minister. Are you saying that even that too is a line that should not be crossed?
If memory serves me right, it was more than one nominee, and the Supreme Court said that that the dominance of the judiciary was being, insofar as appointments were concerned, was being sought to be brought down.
But you know, there is another important point though, Mr. Jain, which again former Supreme Court judges and others point out, is that even though the government doesn't technically have a say in the actual appointments of judges, in a way it does. By sitting on files for years and years, as Sanjay Hegde was also pointing out in the beginning, there are judicial appointments that just do not go through. And they have cited examples of that. Justice Qureshi, for example, is one such example. Mr. Jain. Mr. Jain.
Out of the hundreds and hundreds of recommendation by the Supreme Court Collegium, High Court Collegium, I think there are maybe 3, 4, 2, 4, 3, 5 cases where the government has a different point of view. In my High Court, a few days back, 11 plus 10 judges, 21 judges have been appointed purely on the recommendation of the Supreme Court Collegium. You cannot say why. I mean, I just want to ask one question to those who say, no, this system is better. How many vacancies are lying vacant? How many recommendations are lying vacant? There may be 3, 4 recommendations which might not have been accepted by the government. But then hundreds and hundreds of vacancies of the judges are lying vacant. Why the recommendations are not being made? Why? Who is stopping them? I am saying, make all the recommendations. Let's presume. Fix a date. You have Constitution Day, you have Independence Day. Let's have a full court day. A day fixed that on such and such date, that 1st January of 2023, all vacancies will be fulfilled. There will be no vacancies, Supreme Court, High Court. For that, who has to take the initiative? It is the collegium. Make the recommendation. If out of 100, 2 or 3, government has some reservation, you can't say that no, you have no concern at all. All recommendations of the collegiums are being accepted. Law Minister is very, very clear. We do not want to interfere in the working of the judiciary. We do not want to appoint judges of our own. We want judges to be appointed, number 1. Appoint judges, number 2, on merit, without any political interference and without any delay, and internal politics of the collegiums also.
Well, that sounds lovely, but the reality, Sanjay Hegde, is often different. Is it just a matter of a few files being delayed here and there?
No, it's not a few files. Right now, there is a collegium recommendation that the Chief Justice of Bombay be sent to the Supreme Court. It's been over a month and a half. We have heard nothing from the government. Normally, in past instances, we have seen that the moment the collegium recommendation goes, within the next couple of days, the incumbent has taken oath in the Supreme Court. So, this is also a way of pressurizing the collegium, that we will pass some, we will not pass the others, keep guessing, and therefore, please be sure that when you send your recommendations, you will send only such recommendations that we like. हो तुमको जो पसंद वही बात हम करेंगे.
Where is the question of that, Mr. Singh? Don't take it to that extent. Almost all I am saying, if there have been 1,000 recommendations,
I'm giving you a Supreme Court
995 have been accepted.
Example.
Don't cite just one or two to say, no, you don't want the recommendation to go. Collegium has been making appointments, recommendations which have been accepted. Don't take the point to such an extent that if out of 100 you have objection or you are still considering 1 or 2%, the government wants to interfere, the government wants to dictate. There is a question of dictating. It is this government's National Judicial Appointment Commission was passed unanimously by Parliament. 5 judges, 4-1 have struck it down. Have the government not accepted that? Has the Parliament not accepted that?
I don't think the government has accepted it. The government has tried to undo it.
Some people are only interested in finding one or the other to blame the government. If we make all the recommendations, we will say,
Nidhi,
Mr. Hegde, go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, Chief Justice Muralidhar of the Orissa High Court. There's a recommendation for transfer to Madras. A very fine gentleman. Nothing we've heard. Saurav Kirpal has been reiterated more than once. Nothing has been heard. There have been several recommendations in Jammu and Kashmir. Nothing has been heard. It's not a question of 1 or 2. It is a continuous pattern to assert that the government will not consider those recommendations that it does not like. You know, it's Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's mother-in-law gave her some advice about marriage, that a little deafness is very helpful. The government seems to be deaf to certain names, and it's all praise and immediate processing for certain other names.
Well, I have to leave it at that with the two of you for the moment, but clearly interesting to see how Justice Chandrachud wades, Chief Justice Chandrachud wades through this, difficult time as far as judicial appointments and other challenges are concerned. Thanks to both of you for joining us. Well, joining us now is our two former justices of the Supreme Court, Justice Madan and Justice Deepak Gupta are with us tonight. Thank you very much to both of you for joining us. First, I'd like to ask you both on Justice Chandrachud himself. Justice Madan, a huge burden of expectations on him, given his track record on, values like personal liberty, on press freedom, etc. Would you say that, much of the country is looking at him now to see what he will do?
Oh yes, certainly. You see, I think we've had a bit of a problem in the Supreme Court over the last maybe about 5 or 6 years, and it has not been able to give any direction to our justice delivery system. But some changes were made when Justice Ramanna became the Chief Justice, and of course when Justice Lalit became the Chief Justice. So really the expectations are very, very high. And the good thing is that Justice Chandrachud has sufficient time to bring about the changes and to bring about reforms and in fact transform the justice delivery system. So yes, you're right, the expectations are very high.
Justice Deepak Gupta, the expectations are high, but the challenges are also high, aren't they? Whether it is about pendency of cases, vacancies in the courts, and we'll talk about the collegium system in just a moment, but he faces a tough challenge also.
Yeah, definitely. You see, it's not it's a high position, but it comes with all the, which every high position gets. It comes with all its thorns, it comes with that. It's just not a crown of roses. But having known Justice Chandrachud for the last 4 or 5 years, you see, for my expectations from him are like one, that he should be doing more for the general citizenry, as a protector of the human rights. one is the court is an adjudicator of dispute, but it also is a protector of the human rights of the citizens. So there I feel where the Supreme Court fell back a little, and I hope that under his tenure, because he has a long tenure of 2 years, I mean, I wish it was longer, but, you know, in our system, Justice Lalit was only there for 74 days. But Justice Lalit did show that even in 74 days, you can achieve a lot. So he set the bar very high, and I hope Justice Chandrachud can set the bar higher, even go further.
Right. Justice Kokur, this is all happening at a time when we're seeing this controversy over the appointment of the higher judiciary judges to the Supreme Court and the High Court being reignited, with the comments of the Law Minister recently, who criticized the collegium system currently, which selects judges, also, in a sense, warning that the government would not remain silent forever. What did you think of those comments, first of all? And what do you make of the criticism of this system that currently exists?
Well, there are two things. One is that the comments made by him were totally uncalled for. In fact, it is the government, which is creating all kinds of problems. Just take a few recent examples. About 24th or 25th of September, the Supreme Court recommended Justice Deepak Datta as a judge of the Supreme Court. 1.5 months have gone by and the government has done nothing about it, right? They had also said that Justice Muralidhar should be transferred as Chief Justice of Madras High Court around the same time. Again, the government has done nothing about it. Why? These are questions. It's nice to talk about filling up vacancies and all that. But when the Supreme Court says fill up a vacancy, the government says, no, we're not going to fill up a vacancy. Mr. Saurabh Kripal, an advocate, excellent advocate, his file is pending with the government for the last, I don't know how many years. Why is that? So it's okay for the government to say, let's fill up vacancies, Supreme Court is doing nothing. But what is the government doing? They should also answer these questions, right? So I think the, comments made by him were uncalled for.
Now, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Now, as far as the collegium system is concerned, again, to some extent, yes, it's not as transparent as it should be as far as the courts are concerned. But again, the government is equally transparent, if not more, more opaque, right? Why are they insisting? Why did they insist that Justice Akhil Qureshi should not be appointed as Chief Justice of Madhya Pradesh High Court? What was the reason? Did they tell anybody? Are they telling anybody why Justice Deepak Gupta is not being appointed to the Supreme Court? So the government is equally, if not more, opaque, right? So if there has to be a change, it has to be a change across the board.
Very strong comments from you, sir. Justice Deepak Gupta, would you concur with Justice Madan Lokur's views on the Law Minister's comments? And, I'm sure you would agree that it's not a perfect system, that we have for the appointment of judges. And if I could ask you, in your view, what would be a better way to do this?
See, I don't think the collegium system is working very well. To that extent, I sort of tend to agree with the Law Minister that there needs to be an improvement. But I think do you have a better system? I don't think so. The way this government functions, I don't think we can have government totally, if it comes in control over the appointments, we're heading for disaster. So there has to be the collegium system is the best we can have, but it needs improvement. Even in the judgment, in the NJC judgment where Justice Kokur was a party, they had made recommendations that there should be a permanent secretariat attached to the collegium. There should be, very objective ways of assessing the efficiency, the integrity of a judge who's being considered for appointment or to the Supreme Court, of any lawyer or judge who's been considered for appointment to the High Court or the Supreme Court. So that the Supreme Court was, I think, fell behind. If they had made a secretariat, made it much more, where you feel that the people are doing the right people are coming. But I agree with Justice Kokur totally. Justice Deepak Datta, unanimously chosen by the collegium. He is a judge of 2006. He was overlooked for Chief Justiceship in the sense that he cannot become Chief Justice of India. He has an impeccable record. Justice Muralidhar from Odisha being transferred to Chennai. Now, if the government disagrees, they have a right to disagree. But where is that disagreement being recorded and sent back to the collegium? Now the government has found a new method. Sit over the file.
Exactly.
And that is going to cause great damage to the judiciary. Now just imagine if this new collegium recommends some other names for the Supreme Court. And like what has happened in the past, the government approves those names and sits over Justice Deepak Datta's name. You know, that poor man is suffering for no fault of his. So there has to be, I feel, the Supreme Court should insist that first you make the appointments we have done, then only we'll make new recommendations. Otherwise, this is a method of holding the Supreme Court collegium to ransom. We will not, we'll sit over the files and you keep sending new names.
Strong words from you as well, Justice Gupta, holding the Supreme Court collegium to ransom, and as you pointed out as well, Justice Madan Lokur, that the government technically has no say in the appointment of judges, and yet they can interfere with that process by sitting on files for years on end.
But may I add one thing?
Yes, sir.
I want to say that we blame the government all the time and all, but I am very sorry that Justice Akhil Qureshi, who was one of our finest judges, his name was never even recommended by the collegium.
Yes.
And we don't know why. Justice Lokur, would you agree with that? And where
Yes.
and what can the judiciary itself do, given the genuine opacity? I mean, in appointments of judges, to improve this system. Certainly, the government making appointments, I think everybody would agree, is something that shouldn't happen.
Yes. Well, I entirely agree with Justice Deepak Gupta, and in fact, I've been saying it for a long time that, we do need to have a change in the collegium system. It's not perfect. Okay, let's accept that. So the next question is that can we bring about some changes? And if we bring about some changes, will it improve the collegium system? The answer to that is yes. Now, what are those changes? Those changes are, you should have some kind of a criteria, some kind of an objective criteria for selecting judges, right? So that fingers are not raised, fingers are not pointed, and you select the best persons. Okay, that is one way of doing it. The secretariat is another way, which was actually mentioned in the judgment. Finding out, is there some person who is perhaps better than the best? Who has been overlooked, and if so, why, right? These are issues that the collegium must consider. Now, it's all right for the collegium to say, well, we've selected the best persons. Yes, you have selected the best persons, but there are some who are better than the best. Why have you not selected them? Now that, those reasons perhaps cannot be disclosed. It may not be a good idea to disclose those reasons, but certainly consider those persons also, right? And if you can't select them now, perhaps maybe a little later because of their seniority or whatever it is. Now, if you're going to start appointing persons who are, low down in the seniority and overlook much better judges who are higher up in the seniority, obviously people are going to ask questions. So
Right.
The Supreme Court collegium must have changes. They need to discuss it, and they need to discuss it threadbare. And this, I think, is the right moment to do it before the government, launches an attack on the collegium and tries to displace it completely.
Are you anticipating that?
Yes, I am anticipating that. Yes, I think the recent statements that have been coming from the Law Minister, I think are a clear enough indication that they're going to move, and they're going to move pretty quickly.
Interesting times. Thank you very much, Justice Madan Lokur and Justice Deepak Gupta, for joining us on that important story. Two former judges of the Supreme Court, they're weighing in on this confrontation now between the government and the higher judiciary over the appointment of judges. Thank you.
Thank you.